Hi, everyone, and welcome to the August 8th meeting of the Integrity Body for Creating the Future. If you are new to these meetings, that is the name that might in your organization be called a board, but we're experimenting with doing things a little bit differently around here, and our board focuses on making sure that we are walking the talk of our values in everything we do. And nothing could be more important than the topic we've been talking about, which is loosely, I'm going to call it community engagement, because I know that we're trying to find another term for it. I'm Hilda Gottlieb with Creating the Future. It's wonderful to see all of your faces. If anyone is watching via YouTube or via the blog and would like to tweet your comments to us, please use the hashtag Creating the Future. We will not be looking at comments on the blog, at least not right now. We will later. So if you want to slowly think about things and post it to the blog later, great. But really the only place that we will be looking during the meeting is Twitter. And so if you'll use the hashtag Creating the Future, that would be awesome. And speaking of awesome, what's going on with you all? It is really good to see you. Let's take some time to sort of come into the room here and share where you are, whose ancestral lands those are, anything you know about the people that might be interesting, whose lands, the things that you are learning about the people on the lands that you're sitting. We talk so often about the lands, but they're really the people that matter. So anything that you are learning about the people, and something that's been meaningful in your lives. So let's get started with whomever wants to dive in.
Okay, I'll go first. Hello, everyone. I think good afternoon from here, and I presume good morning for you. I'm Carl, and I'm based here in the UK, just outside St Albans. So awesome for me is that I've just had a couple of weeks vacation where I've been to the Highlands of Scotland. So if you know this country at all, it's sort of, we've had 4 seasons in one day most days. So you mean starts off in the morning, chucking it down, and you need your coat, and then beautiful sunshine in the afternoon. And obviously, the meaningful sort of thing for me was that it was a great time spending time with my family, especially like my 2 boys are sort of now nearly 20 years old and nearly 17. So I don't know how much longer they'll want to come on holiday with us. So that's absolutely fantastic. And so just actually sort of trying to answer Hilda's question, can't really say anything about where I live, but we've been up to the Highlands of Scotland, and if you hunt about on the web a bit, you'll find that one of the things that happened in Scotland was something called the Highland Clearances, where lots of people who own the land were all driven away from the land by those who wanted to essentially sort of take control and take ownership of the land. So some of the things that I know we talk about on this call that have happened in North America, some of those sorts of things have also happened in this part of the world as well. But good to see you all.
You as well, and thank you for that. And how exciting that you got to be with your family in someplace beautiful. That's been a bucket list for me. I have not been. That is definitely a bucket list for me. So, how and everyone else, what's going on in your world?
I'll follow Carl because I also had a little bit of time off, so I am adjusting to being back and trying to work again. How that that on-ramp is hard after you have some quiet time. I'm Justin Pollock. I'm here in Washington, D.C., which is the land of the Piscataway and the Nacotchtank. They were the original harvesters and thrivers on this land, and Yeah, so my awesome is just actually having some time. My wife and I were able to go hunker down in a friend's small little cottage in Cape Cod for 2 weeks with nothing to do. Our kids were off to camp, and so we just enjoyed sitting around, walking the dog, swimming, reading, watching trashy TV, all those kinds of things.
Oh, so wonderful. So wonderful. I never understood when I was a kid and went to camp, I never understood that it was actually more fun for my parents. So how fun. Wonderful. Who else? What's going on in your world? And let's do speed awesomes, speed intros today because we've had so many of us.
I can go ahead. This is Andrew Schulman. Good to see everybody. Today, I'm coming to you from just outside Asheville, North Carolina, which for those of you that know me, it's the opposite side of the country that I'm usually on. It's also the reason I'm looking more pasty than usual with my lighting setup here. This is the land I recently learned, the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Tribe, which I did not know anything about, and I had to do some digging, and there's actually like a whole subgroup of the Cherokee tribe that is called the Eastern Band, and they had a lot of their own governance and setup and a lot of interesting things. So that was very interesting for me to learn about as I came here this week. And my awesome is being here, is visiting. We're visiting some family for the week. So getting some time with some relatives, and my daughter's getting to see some of her cousins, and just a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful.
I can go. So I'm finally getting over COVID, which is fantastic, so I can be back in the office. So I'm in downtown Sarasota, which was originally home to the Calusa and Tocobogo tribes, which unsurprisingly were big into fishing, but a little bit surprising to me, really traveled around this region. And awesome is I decided to take on a new hobby this month, and I'm going to learn how to crochet. Yay.
How wonderful. Awesome. Jackie, how about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. Jackie Bradley. I'm joining today from the lands of the Wyandot Nation and Anishinaabeg, also known as Michigan. My awesome today is that we got some rain, and my plants are thankful, and I am thankful that I don't have to go out and water when I get off of work. Less awesome is that it's about 98% humidity now, but small gifts, I guess.
Wow. Wow. The fact that folks in places where it normally rains are celebrating, y'all sound like us here in the desert. Yeah, I know Florida's been dry as well. Unbelievable. Ron, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm speaking from Halifax, Nova Scotia, land of the Mi'kmaq. We're also coming off a over a week of a heat wave here, a little bit unusual for us, and it's very humid today, and we're looking forward to some rain as well. And my awesome is a good friend of mine has been very sick with Lyme disease, which is quite rampant here in Nova Scotia right now. And he's really been laid up for almost 7 weeks, completely fatigued and in pain. And finally, the meds are allowing him to get out and walk a bit and have some semblance of a normal life. So we're got our fingers crossed for him.
Wow. Oh, we'll keep ours crossed too. Yeah. Mark.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. We're on the land of the Shinnecock is one of the family groups that are here, and they've pretty much taken off on the idea of farming kelp, which has tied them into an entire Northeast corridor industry, not just a business, but an industry. But it also reminds me that they're going to be the first ones to have to leave the 800 acres we gave them, that they were pushed onto because of sea level rise. So I think my next, either next year or the year after that, we're going to be starting a real campaign on relocation for the people who can't afford or shouldn't leave. So there you go. My awesome was that we had a press conference on deer about our Lyme situation on Long Island, which is the worst. The Suffolk County is the worst in the state of New York right now. And I had a person from our New York State government come up to me, who I've found over time from local business dealings, that she's a liar, a cheat, and a thief. And she came to me and said that she was very glad to be working with me on the same side on a subject.
So what does that make you?
That's what I have to analyze.
Well, that's exciting. That's exciting. Let's see on my screen here, Farah.
Hi everyone, my name is Farah Mahesri, she, her pronouns. I am on unceded Ohlone territory in the Bay Area in California. And the tribes do ask that we emphasize that it is unceded land and that they never agreed, there was never a treaty signed, they never agreed to any relocation or any agreement. They were just killed off in large numbers, although they are still here. And my awesome is that I just got a lot of really great community time last week, in which we also grappled with some really big questions, particularly around how to address climate anxiety in youth, which is just a really fascinating and incredibly kind of ironically hopeful topic to be talking with people about.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Sherry, how about you?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, my awesome is similar to those who have been doing some vacationing and but working at the same time, because I'm sure that's what you're all doing. Got to go up to Indiana from Florida because I'm here in the Parrish area, and the temperature was so awesome up there. So that was really nice. I'm here, as Rachel mentioned, a little bit north of her, but the Calusa Indians were basically settled here. The Manatee River brought most of everyone inland, and we're very lucky to have the Bishop, the South Florida, used to be called South Florida Museum, but the Bishop Museum of Science and Industry, that has amazing artifacts from that time, and a couple other places to visit, the historic Spanish Point and the Indian Mound Park. There's a lot of history here, so doing well.
Wonderful. Dimitri, how about you?
Hello, everyone. Great to see you all here today. I am Dimitri Petropoulos, talking to you from Tucson, Arizona, the traditional lands of the Tohono O'odham people, who are still here and still doing what they traditionally did, is they are farming, following water. And since rain and water were part of the conversation today, sorry, Hildy, if I take this awesome away from you, but we had recently put up some gutters, and we got a rainwater storage tank. And we had a storm last night that was almost an inch of rain, and we are at 1,200 gallons of rainwater that we can use to water our desert yards. So that's pretty awesome.
It is awesome. For those of you who are not from deserty kind of areas, there is an entire subject matter of water harvesting, so that the water doesn't just run off into the streets, run off into the sewers, run off, that you're keeping it on your property for as long as possible, so that it will both seep into the ground, so that you can channel it to do irrigation, and so that you can save some of it in tanks. And so we have been working on all of it. And so we are like children. We run out the minute it starts raining, going, look, it's coming out of the gutters, and oh, look, it's going into the tank. So yeah, it's been pretty wonderful. Elaine, how about you?
Hello, everyone. Well, I'm going to start with my first awesome. I didn't have internet up until about an hour ago, so I was in a panic that I wouldn't be here. So that's my awesome. I have internet and I can be here. So I am here from Dufferin County, which is an area just north of the big city of Toronto in Ontario. And I sit on the lands of the Teonatate, Adawandran, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe peoples. And I have also not only incorporated catalytic thinking into my daily routine, I'm incorporating reconciliation into my daily routine, and in an Indigenous reconciliation program, I learned a word, and it is Namwayut. Namwayut means we are one and we do what's in the best interest of all. So it makes me sad when I hear even, we know this in Canada and we know this in the United States, and then we hear it today from over across the pond that there are people who were driven out of their lands all over the world. Anyway, it saddens me that they didn't know about collective enoughness then, Hildy. And so at least we are on that, and we are working in Namwayut. And I do want to have a call out to just say, Hildy, I know you have a birthday in August. When is it?
21st.
Oh, 21st. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Josephine, how about you?
Hi, everybody. I am joining you from Sarasota, Florida, the home of some of the oldest Native American tribes on the west coast of Florida, including Calusa and Tocobaga people. So my awesomeness is first foremost being here, present, alive and well amongst humanity. I feel compelled to say that, just gracious for waking up and being a part of the world on a daily basis. So there's that. And then awesomeness is one of my clients. I just got back from a 4-hour meeting, believe it or not, but we're putting together the third, it's a diversity initiative client that I work with, and we're putting together the Sarasota Native American Film Festival. And so it's just fabulous to be a part of working with the Seminole tribe people and some of the other folks here in town to just really talk about what we can do through film, obviously, but including other things to educate our Sarasota Manatee community about Native American Indigenous people. And it's just exciting. And I think the awesomeness is that, and that I am excited about work and giving back to the community and bringing groups together. So we'll be paying attention and working, with catalytic thinking and how I can incorporate it. And it just all fits together so nicely.
Wonderful. Oh, that's exciting. That's very exciting. For me, anything that has to do with movies is exciting. So that's wonderful. I am, like Dimitri, in Tucson, Arizona, the homelands of the Tohono and the Pasquayaqui. And one of the interesting things about being in the desert and learning from the people who have lived here for a lot longer than we have is we think of deserts as that word, deserts, deserted. And people have lived here for thousands of years, and there's plenty of food in the desert, and there's seasons in the desert, and there's harvests in the desert. So beyond the agriculture that was learned to accommodate the climate, just like everywhere, the fact that there is a huge harvest going on right now of the saguaro fruit. And that has been for, like I said, thousands of years, stuff that people depended on to live, which is pretty awesome. My big awesome, I'm going to show you pictures, and Elaine started it. I kept joking with y'all that, let me share my screen, that really all I wanted for my birthday was a toilet. Y'all have been hearing me say for a while now that really all I wanted was a toilet, because for 6 months, the hole got filled in, but that was really about it. Well, I got my birthday present. So that is absolutely my awesome. I never thought I'd be so excited to see that little guy sitting in the corner there, but
Well, maybe next year you get a sink.
oh, I don't even care. I don't even care. So yeah, Dimitri's done an amazing job of renovation on the bathroom. He did all the flooring, he did all the walls, he did all the everything. The plumber and the electrician came in, but yeah, when the plumber arrived with my birthday present, that's all I needed. So thank you all for bearing with me as I have complained about that bathroom for how long. Oh, goodness. Well, it is really wonderful to be with you all. I'll do a quick recap on where we are and where we're headed. We've got 2 more meetings scheduled this month. The next one is the 30th at noon Pacific time, to hopefully wrap up our quote unquote community engagement plan. I'm looking really forward to figuring out what we are going to call this thing. What we've been talking about is are the conditions for creating people feeling so involved in their own community, being that this is not our community and we're inviting them in, but really talking about what does it feel to be in that big we. And so that as we're moving forward to determine what's next for creating the future, that big we is determining it, that it's not 6 of us sitting in here or 12 of us sitting in here. We've talked about the fact that an engaged community is where people feel that they have the power to create their own future, that they feel connected, they feel that they're learning together. But I want to share with you something that really struck me this weekend. We went to see, and I don't know if it's playing where y'all are, but you might remember about 10 years ago, there was this darling little 2-minute video of Marcel the Shell with shoes on. And now there is a movie with Marcel the Shell with shoes on. It's a mediocre movie, so I'm like not recommending the movie. But at a point in the movie, Marcel says, because they show him that it's a mockumentary and he's trying to find his family. And they show him that his video has 22 million views on YouTube. And he says, well, that's not community, that's an audience. And here I am sitting in the movie theater writing that down. That's not community, that's an audience. And what I thought would be helpful is we do tend to, in this kind of work, conflate those two. We talk about our community when in fact they're our donors or our volunteers, or basically the whole othering thing that we've been talking about with the term community engagement, that it's basically we go out to the community, not we're part of it. We go out to the community to ask for whatever we think we need. We need help, we need volunteers, we need money. What is the difference between an audience and a community? What makes something a community? Because it occurred to me at that split second that a big part of people wanting to engage in this conversation about what's next for creating the future is they need to feel that they own it in some way. They need to feel that that it's not them helping us, that we are all together and deciding stuff together because it's of mutual benefit. And so I really have been thinking a lot about that difference between an audience and community. What is the difference between having an audience and having a community? Yeah, Dustin.
Well, I think at its most basic level, an audience is voyeuristic. It's viewing something that is to be observed, whereas community is simply the presence of living with. So, and if we think about a theater, there's, you know, the performers and the audience is the voyeur. However, the audience itself is actually a community because they are coexisting and living side by side with each other in that experience.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Farah.
Thanks. I actually had this conversation with a similar conversation last week with a friend. And we were talking about what the difference is between a team and a community, and very similar to what Justin said, that there are transactional relationships or relationships that have a goal or a purpose or an outcome. So teams or organizations, companies are trying to do a thing together. And that's what you kind of orient yourself around. Everyone works to achieve the thing. Communities exist without a goal to achieve. They exist to exist. And if communities decide to take action, it's organic, it's, you know, because the moment requires something. So we'll support each other, we'll respond to an earthquake or a fire, but we don't, a community doesn't necessarily exist, in my opinion, for a specific outcome, especially not one that is counted in dollars or counted in trainings held or numbers of anything.
Yeah, yeah. And determined by them and not by whoever's trying to sell them something. Yeah. What else? I love that word, organic.
I think also, to me, community involves sort of having skin in the game. You feel for what happens. You're invested in it. So, and it seems that you have committed a certain amount of time or support or money or all of those to whatever it is you're doing. So it matters. It matters what happens. You feel the difference, and you have something to gain usually by it as well. Whereas an audience, I feel it's more like lurking online. You still can enjoy the conversation and get a lot out of it, but whether, you know, something's accomplished or not really possibly doesn't affect you as much as when you have put your time and effort into it.
Sure. Josephine, did you have your hand up?
I did. It already was kind of said. It just is, again, what brings folks to the table, right? Like an audience is coming to see or to do a specific, versus the community is together often and for you know, like reasons, but not just coming together for something specific.
Yeah. What do we see happening in communities that we don't see happening in an audience? Yeah, Andrew.
I would say people working together. Something that strikes me as a community activity rather than an audience activity.
Yeah. Rachel.
Connecting with each other and genuinely getting to know each other is much more community oriented than audience.
Yeah.
And maybe that same is an audience is only together for, a specific period of time, maybe 1 or 2 whatevers, and then a community is ongoing for a longer length of time.
It's really interesting as I've been thinking about that, and asking, does Creating the Future have a community or an audience? I mean, really thinking about it. If I look just at the folks who get our newsletter, my answer is both. Because there's people who feel part of it, get excited about it, click at every turn. At the minute the newsletter comes in, says, can we play? Can I be part of this? Can I? And there's folks who we've never heard from. The ones who immediately click and say, I want to play. Oh my gosh, this is going on. This sounds great. Frequently are talking about what they feel when they are part of these kinds of conversations. And so I'm really thinking a lot about, do we have an audience? Do we have a community? And if we have more of an audience than a community, what does that mean? And what does that mean in terms of bringing people together to facilitate what's next for Creating the Future? Carl and then Justin.
Are they like concentric circles where the community is the inner circle and then the outer circle is the audience? And then there might be a sort of a broader circle further out where they're sort of aware. I suppose I was just sort of thinking a bit like the church. I mean, you have a congregation who will come together on a particular time of the week and so on, because they might want to be told what to do. I mean, and that's quite okay to be in the audience, actually. Sometimes I recognize when I'm in an audience that sometimes there are people who are more talented than me and better than me at doing whatever they do, and I'm quite happy to sit back and listen, and I get a lot from that. And then but then sort of think about the church, there are lots of people who believe in a particular sort of God or so on, but they don't attend church because the formal thing is not for them, and both are okay.
Yeah, and there's the people who are at church because that's where they feel they're in community. That's where they see their peeps. That's where they're connected. Yeah, I love the analogy and I love the concentric circles. Justin, yeah. You're muted, hon.
So there's an experience I have, and I think it takes us a little bit into the sort of esoteric, but when I'm working with organizations and we sort of talk about a community vision, I'm always taken aback when somebody says, well, which community are you talking about? I'm like, well, we don't actually have the liberty of saying what the community really, like from my perspective, it just is. The community are the people who, in most cases are at least geographically, connected, that their lives impact each other. And so perhaps that's what we're looking at is, if we're going to use this idea of community, it really has to do with the interdependence and the fact that we affect others. So we are in community when we are affecting and being affected by those with whom we exist or coexist. Obviously, this kind of a space changes that dynamic. But, again, when I'm working with organizations and I'm like, look outside, that's your community. Well, what about this group? That's your community too. Like there isn't this idea that there's a barrier. So I do think there's something we have to be cautious about, which is the term being co-opted to otherize in some ways, that we, going back to what Carl was saying, a church to say, well, this is my community. No, it's not your community. Like you don't get to possess community. It just is this group of people may be communing, but they are not the extent of the community. The community is everything. And certainly that opens it up too, if we start talking about the environmental side, which is to say, you know, the earth is also part of our community. And we don't tend to think about that as readily.
Yeah. I'm trying to recall the exact words the last time we got together. Ron, you mentioned something about the rights of the environment that your community had been talking about, acknowledging the rights of the environment. It's powerful. So as we move forward here, because our whole goal is to determine what's next, if anything, for this organization. What needs to be in place for folks to want to be part of that conversation? Given everything that we have talked about in the past several weeks and months, that sense of connection, that sense of interdependence, we frequently hear from people saying, I feel like I found my peeps. I feel like, oh, wow, I thought I was the only one. I feel like I found my people. What needs to be in place for folks to feel that? And the next question after that will be, you know, what are the things that will help bring that into fruition? But what needs to be in place? What do people need to have in order to feel that? What do they need to see? What do they need to experience? Yeah, Jackie.
I think the thing that stands out to me is an invitation. And that might seem obvious, but I'm thinking even of myself, where I had been reading the newsletters, I'd been watching these conversations online, but it wasn't until I saw an email from Hildy saying, we need someone to take the notes, that I was like, I can do that. It was a very clear invitation for me to be able to step in and kind of take that next step.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm putting you on the spot. If you don't feel ready to answer, say I need to think about it, and don't let my question lead you to something you're not ready to talk about. But did you feel at that point or somewhere down the line that there was a shift from audience to community?
Yeah, and I think we had a conversation about that, Hildy. At a certain point, you came to me and said, we'd love for you to participate in these conversations and not just take the notes. And I said to you, oh, I was in my brain, I was here as a note taker. It had never occurred to me to make that shift of no, I'm here to participate as well as taking the notes. And again, that was an invitation in a different way. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank
you. Hildy, I'd like to add to what Jacqueline said, and it is an invitation, but it's also being open. So you can send out an invitation, but if you're not really open to other people joining and other people becoming part of the community, even though they might be new to you, I think that's important. And then adding to that, being welcoming when they do. And I can say from my heart that I never felt so appreciated and valued as when I came to that first meeting and you introduced me and I went, how does she know that about me? Because you made it your business to know something about everybody who was in that room and introduce people who were new and make that immediate connection. So it was like, I felt part of the family. I felt like now I'm one of the peeps. So, that's how I felt anyway.
So what do people need to see and experience in order to feel welcomed, to feel invited? Because I know from my experience in connecting with folks who may just send a little note or may have clicked on a class or may have done something, that there's this sense of, and I'm sure that it's what we've culturally created, but there's this sense of me. You want me? You want me to be in the meeting? And how often people, very much as you said, Jackie, are shocked when they join one of our conversations and say, wow, I thought I was just going to sit and watch. You actually wanted me to talk. And so what is it that helps people get past that? Well, it's just, my favorite word, just. It's just me. I'm not as smart as they are. I'm not. What needs to be in place? What do they need to see and experience to feel, oh yeah, that they're talking about me?
And just again, Hilda, you know me with my call for the Horton Hears a Who and every voice matters, and trying to convince everybody that they're one of those voices, that yes, you are a voice that matters. Because I have this struggle with my own DC Moves community. It's all around, no, it's not my responsibility as a coordinator to just do all this stuff. It is ours. It is ours to create, and we're in the same place that you are at. And I'm keep asking myself, what is it that I can do to make it possible for somebody to come? And so how do I convince them that their voice matters? How do I convince them that without them, we can't go forward? I don't mean that quite literally, but it's that you are the value. You have your gifts. We need your gifts. We need you to come and bring your gifts. So I'm struggling with that myself in terms of how do you get that message to fall on people so that they go, yeah, I need to be there. This is important. I need to be part of the conversation.
And so often we hear your voice matters. And again, it's an us and them. It's a, please fill out this survey. Your voice will determine what programs we come up with. Your voice, our programs. I mean, there's so much I'm noticing from our conversations over the past month, the degree to which there is othering in every little bit of our language, in every bit of our normal conversation, which, it comes from being in a capitalist, colonialist society that is very us and them. Businesses will constantly say, your voice matters. Your voice will determine what our, and we need a survey from the last time you stayed at Hilton and the last time you took our airline and the last time you took our, because you're, and I'm thinking about so many different things, that it matters for you. So it's not because what we're constantly being told is it matters for us inside here. I don't know, there's just something there. Carl and then Dimitri.
So in the newspapers here in the UK today, one of the news stories was that some academics have just published some research about school councils. So what you would think of as high school councils, where the kids are asked to sort of elect amongst themselves a bunch of people, and then apparently they will have a say in the running of the school. It's participatory democracy and so on. And the research has concluded that they're a complete waste of time, and that everyone is spending loads of time and money setting these things up, and actually they do more harm than good. And the reason that they do more harm than good is that you're involving people without actually then giving them any power to actually do anything with what they've decided at the end. So the kids come out of it thinking that actually democracy is a waste of time, because it's all just a sort of a bit of a way of involving me without actually giving me any real power. I wasn't planning to say that. What I was actually planning to say was that you might have seen me just turning round before, because on my wall I have a post-it note that has Mark's triptych of what do you need for people to be involved, and the 3 words were safe, included, and valued. And I still think that's the best thing I've heard on the matter.
Thanks, and it's not mine, Carl. I got that from an educator from the Fritjof Capra's study group on systems view of life, and Lisa is our leader, and she's been a special needs teacher for, I don't know, 30 years or more, and she was the one that really came up with that. So I have to defer.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think that safe and included and valued is really important once folks are in the door, once we're together. I'm really sort of looking for what helps people say, oh, that's me. I want to be in that. You know, I'm thinking about my own neighborhood. And that is a community within a larger community within we're talking this concentric circles. There's so many people who are excited about the fact and loving the fact that we've got a drainage way that runs through our neighborhood. And in past years, it was just a flood zone full of weeds, and the neighborhood took it over. And nothing official, nothing, somebody started mowing it. Somebody put a bench in, somebody started trimming the trees. And there's folks who are actively going out and weeding and watering and doing that stuff. They feel they own that park. They feel that this is my neighborhood. There's a guy who walks around with one of those trash picker upper things and does nothing but walk up and down the streets and picks up trash. And there's folks who appreciate it, but don't think of it as, well, I need to be part of that. I need to do something. So I'm loving the concept of concentric circles. What does it take for the folks who are loving the fact that it's so green right now as I go on my morning walk to say, I'd love to help trim trees? What needs to be in place for that? Dimitri, you had some stuff.
Yes, thank you, Hildy. I've been struggling with the idea of the difference between a community and an audience. And Carl's comments about, the fact that you may shift roles or have both roles at the same time around the same thing. And one of the thoughts that comes to mind is invitation. Thank you, Jackie. And the sincerity of the invitation. What do I perceive that invitation as being? When it's HP wanting my sincere opinion about the toner cartridge, how sincere is that invitation? And what's its outcome? Its outcome is HP makes a product that they sell more of, they make more money, whatever. I may use that product, but I don't feel that I'm sincerely valued in the sense of who I am and what my needs are. It's really about them. The other thing about audiences that I was thinking about is that audiences don't have to interact at all with each other. They may all be in the movie theater together. They may not say a word to each other on arrival or on departure. So they could easily be at home. They could easily be driving in their car. They may be the audience, but they may feel like they're part of the NPR community that listens to, Science Friday, but they are still just an audience. And unless they call in. On the other hand, then they become part of that community because they are interacting and they are valued and whatever. But anyways, I'm still musing on it, and I'm sure I will be for a while here.
Thank you. Justin, then Ron, then Josephine.
Well, I think I was going back to, some of what Carl was saying and some of the question, which I think is people have to have a sense of pride and efficacy in their life. I mean, that's really, when you talk, Hildy, about your neighborhood, it's people feel pride in their home and their surrounding environment. So I think that's kind of core to this, is that people really do have a sense of pride, hope, aspiration, and agency. That if those don't exist, then people are not inclined to step forward into spaces, period.
And what does it take for them to feel that? And not just you, Justin, anybody. What does it take for people to feel that pride and efficacy, the hope, aspiration, agency? Enough to say, that's me. You're talking about me.
Well, without going down the wrong rabbit hole, there's the dismantling of many systems which disenfranchise and displace and disassociate people from their own lives and literally their own being. But that's not quite as helpful.
Well, as a precursor to our entirely dismantling capitalism, what are some of the things that lead to people having that sense of agency and efficacy? Ron, you had something.
I guess, well, first on a point that Justin made earlier, that community just is, it led me to think about, rather than the audience versus community, in my head, it might make more sense to say active participation versus passive receptor of what's going on. Because if community just is, that is just describing everything, as opposed to how engaged they are or partnered with or invested in this particular process we're going through. And I was, as I was answering that question, what did I feel and what did I experience before coming more involved? I mean, I think, I knew about creating the future because of your presence in the world and my knowledge of your past work, Hildy. I guess it's how I found out about creating the future. I have a certain trust in your track record personally, because we go back many decades in the nonprofit world, community benefit world, and I saw, through your books and through your work that you had success in many different forms, and your values were very close to what I felt resonated with me. And I see as when you lurk or when you follow the meetings of creating the future, it just seems to resonate, that the values are very clear, that it is open to people, and you do value getting the internal dialogue right before we act, and making sense of things so that you can be efficient in your actions and know that they are grounded and based in a lot of data, a lot of different input. So I think for me, in terms of where I'm going with my life now, I'm retired and looking to try to make a change in a very small way in whatever I can influence from now till death. How can I change what Carl was mentioning, this loss of ability to trust our system, and I think I am there. I've seen our municipal system have just moderate success at change over the decades. There's some change, but and really the the political system is extremely disappointing in terms of how really people are treated, even within the governing party. I just finished a book called Indian in the Cabinet, Speaking Truth to Power by Jody Wilson-Raybould. It was fascinating to see she, Minister of Justice, Auditor General, and even she found that the governance was really, truly pretty dysfunctional in our country, which was not surprising, but it just, when it's spoken out loud by someone who's been there, it's really disheartening. So I think for me, I do feel that this system that you are working on collectively here does have a very good opportunity to make great change in a different way that I see organizations, how they function now, so.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you. Josephine and then Mark.
Hi, so our conversation has me wondering for an instance, for an example, the guy that's in your community that has the picker up or the trash picker up, or does he, I guess it's two things, this is a question maybe. Does he feel like that's community, right? Like, so if I'm just thinking in my community, if I went and picked up the trash, maybe I don't like to see trash, right? Like, but am I doing it because I feel community, right? Or maybe he doesn't interact with anyone, like we were saying, community is participatory, different than maybe audiences aren't. So I don't, so maybe he doesn't talk to anyone, but he just wants to pick up the trash. So is that community, right? I'm just sort of, my mind's like, oh, wow. And then it occurred to me as well, like, at least for me, I think some of my communities started with me being an audience, if we're, using the looser terms of both, right? Like participating more of a voyeur of, listening, seeing what's going on. And then at some point, the more I go, then I become part of that community or feel, secure or safe or whatever that is to have me step into, then it's more often and in a different capacity. Anyway, those are just things that are coming to mind.
Yeah, huge. And you sparked my bringing out different colored pens. So thank you for that. Just thinking about asking folks who are currently in our audience some of these questions. So yeah, thank you for that. Mark.
It's going to sound like I'm all over the place, but I'm going to try to connect the dots here. Carl, the concentric circles. We've got somebody asked me point blank how many members we had in our organization, and the answer was how many. And the other question was, well, how many people read your newsletter? Well, that was a little easier because the people who are members are nowhere near as large as the people who read the newsletter, which is not the same audience. Here we go, the word audience on our Instagram account. So I'm going to step aside for a second. We had somebody from, we were on a group meeting about getting communities to do composting. And one of the people who's been doing this a long time and dealing with contracts with municipalities said, don't try to go to 20 municipalities and say, I have the greatest program on the planet and you need to take this on. What you need to do, she said, is get the program into place and have it be successful so that communities start coming to you to say, golly, this is working for you. How do we help? How do we make this work? And the third part of that, I think we just came across it. The idea of asking people to help as a volunteer means that you're going to make my program work for us. It's still for us, but it's my program. And there's no ownership. And Hildy, you said the word, and it just kind of rocked me, that we can have shared participation in a program, but we need ownership so that the people who are working with us are not just helping us. And the statement I would make is that I don't need volunteers to help me with a program. I need people to make a particular outcome happen.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah, one of our fellows, Lisa Humanek, for decades ran volunteer centers. She always used to talk about the fact that when we talk about volunteers within organizations, we tend to use the words use and utilize. We could use some volunteers. And she says, you know, it's remarkable when you do studies of why do people volunteer, they never use the words use and utilize. I thought I could be used or utilized. So it just really came to me as you're talking, Mark. I'm thinking a lot about the question that Farah raised the last time that we were together, which is, what is each of your communities? Where do you feel you are in community? What lets you get engaged with the communities that you are in? And Farah, thank you for that question. If you're already in the community, you're already, whether it's your neighborhood, whether it's your church, whether it's your whatever, you're already in that community, and you would identify yourself as being part of that community. You know, I'm part of my kid's school. I'm part of whatever. What leads you to step further in, to feel, as Justin was talking about, that sense of hope and agency? Sherry.
One thing that is a driver for me is normally who else I'm helping, you know, again, the word, you know, helping, but it's what is the subject matter? What, you know, are there other people involved that I want to work with or help? So a lot of community for me is about the people more so than maybe about and then the particular topic may come along. So, you know, finding the people you identify with, not necessarily, I'm not going to use the word feel comfortable with, but that you feel that you are a part of a group that you can lend or contribute something to. I think that's how, for me, it starts out. And then as it moves along, it's more of then what ideas can be created amongst us for the community. I wanted to comment about something that was talked about earlier, and, you know, relationship to you've asked, how do you get people to become a part of it? What brings people into the community? And I think what my experience has been is, I think it's been said too, is a lot of listening to first. It never happens, or very rarely happens, that the synergy starts at the first big group meeting, right? Or the first big effort. If you're having a cleanup day, or you're, you know, you're involved in a family fun fest, and, you know, you've got different people coming in. It never necessarily happens at one particular event or community organization, but more about as you see people continue to participate. We do have seen recently, because I am board member of my local area community, but only a rather new one for the last couple of years, is that most of people seem to be touched by something negative. And so if there is a way to bring out the positive or have them start to know that their participation lends towards learning and something becoming more positive, then we get more people that want to be a part of our organization, and they bring great talent. So I think there always needs to be some effort placed upon really understanding who's involved and what their talents are and what they can bring, not for us to use them, but for them to feel a part of this community and the change or the actual achievement of what's about to happen.
Lots of good kernels in everything that you just shared. You got my brain popping. What else? What has led each of you to step in and be more active in whatever community you self-identify as being part of? Yeah, Carl.
Well, when you asked that question before about what communities are you part of, I think I listed about 5 different communities that I feel part of. Some are about where I live, as you say, about place. Some are virtual. Some are about work interests, and some are about leisure interests. So what prompts me to sort of become more involved? Well, it's different for each community. Some of it is literally because I care about where I live, and I want the place to, I want where I live to look nice, and so I have self-interest, I guess, is the point that I'm sort of making there. But then there are a couple of other communities where I contribute to, but I pay to be part of those communities. So I sort of feel like I value them in a different way, in a more commercial way, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just value sort of them in a different way. And then there are others where I feel I've got something to offer. I mean, I've got some knowledge, and yeah, I think I've said this to you before, but when I was working in my old job, which was a membership organization, actually, just thinking out loud, actually, this is probably quite useful. We thought of our members as a community, and they weren't. They were just a list. They were an email distribution list. They weren't a community. And what I was trying to do in my last few years before I left is that I was trying to change that and turn it into a community and so on. And one of the things that was said to me a few years ago that sort of made me think that there was real potential there was that members join for what they can get, but they stay for what they can give. And I think if you can get to that sort of point where people want to be part of a community because they get that sort of dopamine hit from helping other people, which you get when you give to charity or you volunteer. If you being part of a community, you get that sort of sometimes. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that as a motivation. Makes you feel good about yourself.
There's a wonderful quote that I use all the time that is going to be in the next book as well, which, by the way, that's another part of my awesome is the writing is going well. So, okay. And you notice that the writing on my next book, which has been in process for 10 years, still didn't make it beyond the toilet. So the toilet is still one after that one.
Priority.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is a wonderful quote from a theologian named Robert Thurman, who talks about the fact that we feel strength when we give, because when we are taking, we feel like we are in need. And when we are giving, we feel strong because we feel that we have something to give. And that it actually builds our self-esteem to give because we feel like we have something that we can offer, which I always appreciated. You know, one of the things that strikes me as we're talking about this is I have a friend who on Instagram has a separate Instagram account for a band that she is in love with. And she actually labels the account with her initials and the band's name. And most of us feel like we're an audience. We listen, we click something on Spotify, we might buy an album. We're definitely an audience. She follows them everywhere they go and is in community with others who are as fanatical about this band. And to her, that is her family. Those are the people she loves. Those are the people that, oh my gosh, I'm going to fly down to Mexico and see them, and I can't wait to see my peeps. So she wants to see the band, but she wants to be with her peeps. What is it that turns somebody from I'm listening on Spotify to I want to be part of this? And I was struck, I think it was you, Sherry, talking about who else is part of it? Do I want to be with them? I'm thinking about some of these conversations that we have. You know, Carl, you have always half joked that this is your me time. And I have quoted that so often to say how, you know, when I'm standing on a stage and I say, so how many of your board members feel like this is your me time? And I know that several of our board members became board members because they were fascinated by the conversations and they wanted to keep having that conversation. So there's something in that. What is it that makes that move from I'm on a list? You know, we've got our newsletter list. We've got thousands of people on the list. We've got a much smaller number of people who actually click on things. So in their own way, they're stepping into some. I'm curious about that. I want to see more about that. But there's still a list versus part of. We are together. It's all of us. Rachel.
I think a really good word for what you're describing is excitement. For me, when Sherry had approached me about coming to this catalytic thinking session, and she's like, here's what it's about, let me know what you think. If you want to join, I'll add you. And when I read the description, I just got extremely excited because this is something that I've been wanting to learn about for a while. And it's something that was important to me to get out of my fellowship here with the Patterson Foundation. And so I think excitement really describes a lot of what people have been saying. And so for me, it was excitement for learning. But I think in other instances, it can just be excitement to be a part of something, excitement to maybe add your resources and change something. Different, because I mean, you get different things out of whatever community you're about. But I think what really makes someone want to participate more or be more involved is excitement for whatever may come.
Yeah. So what gets people excited? If you are on a newsletter list, so let's look very specifically at Creating the Future's audience and community. We've got several places where those folks, we've got one place where they gather. There is a group of consultants on Facebook where folks gather and they feel they are in community with each other. They help each other, they support each other, they are there with each other. It's not all catalytic thinking consultants. Many of them have barely heard of Creating the Future. We act as a convener to bring them together. We've got a newsletter list. What generates that kind of excitement in those kinds of audiences? And they are audiences. What generates that kind of excitement to say, I'm going to fly to Mexico to be with the band? Justin.
I think there's an element of this that is an affirmation. And that's either an affirmation towards personal sense making. So when Carl was talking about the groups that he's a part of and sort of reflecting on that, like a lot of times I'm part of something because it's helping advance my ability to make sense of something, to put pieces together in a meaningful way for me. There are other times when I'm connected because I'm affirming how I have made sense of things. I mean, and that can be both beneficial and not. But I think there is an element there that people, or for me, I tend to step forward when I feel affirmed either in my quest to understand something or make sense of something, or I'm looking for affirmation that I have, a validating a way that I have made sense of something. And then I think from there may be opportunities to demonstrate and practice that art, whatever it may be.
I'm starting to list some of the things that I'm hearing to pull things together. I'd also be curious still on the question of the communities where you feel speak to you enough that for whatever reason, that you are a participating member of that community rather than an observing member of that community. What makes that difference for you, that you're like, yeah, of course. Sometimes it's I'll do that, and sometimes it's of course I'd be part of that. Why would I not be part of that? In that realm, in your own communities. Yeah, Sherry.
Well, in Bind in general, what's created a sense of wanting to be involved is not so much that I'm in opposition to change and growth and the community expanding, but it's a rather rural area. I've been here a long time. There's a lot of new development, but I was, it's a part of making sure that I have a personal sense of history, of wanting history to be a part of the future, not something that's seen as old and negative and the way it's supposed to be, but a collective thought about where something came from and how it's meaningful and where it impacts the growth. And so for me, I'm a part of something. I've lived here for over 35 years, but I've not been a part of this local group until recently. But I was going to mention to you that, and to the group here, is I was thinking about who the other members are and what might bring them, what brought them to the table and what brought them to want to continue to work hard. And it was all about a sense of what I'm mentioning, which is some are very deep in history and what the community looked like and why so many people wanted to move here, because of its appearance and where it's located and the environment and how do you keep some of those things but then also allow change to happen. And so our involvement in this group is that we try to educate and allow other people in the community that aren't members to understand how things work and how their voice can be heard and where they need to go to see where changes are and when it's an appropriate time to speak up about how you feel about a land use change or a zoning change or something like that. And so I was thinking about what brings that group together. It's meaningful about the community environmentally, what it looks like, how it is, and its history. So that's one example.
Yeah, great. Carl.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think Sherry made a really good point there that unfortunately lots of things that do encourage people to take action and do something are negative. Certainly where I live, Sherry, that if you want to get people involved in the community, the single most useful thing that you could do is say that you're going to build a house or build some new houses somewhere, and then I can assure you that people will come together. But a more serious point, Hildy, in as much as I understand the research in this area, there is an awful lot of what's called post hoc justification goes on when you ask people about why they got involved. So in other words, they get involved for reasons that they can't quite explain themselves, but they come up with that reason afterwards to justify why they did it. And if you look at volunteering, for example, and what is one of the main reasons why people get involved as volunteers, the very simple answer is because they were asked.
Yeah.
It's the same with charitable giving. There's a really big study from Notre Dame University in the US called, and it's worth looking at actually. It's called The Science of Generosity, a big literature review. And when you look at why people give money to good causes, not just charities, they reckon that something like 80 and 90% of incidences of giving are preceded by being asked.
Yeah.
So the message is people get involved because you ask them.
Yeah. What's occurring to me as we're talking, well, you go ahead, Josephine.
You can go. Mine was really quick. It's the connection. So I joined a new group that gives money to the community collectively, like a giving circle. And there was an amount to pay to be a part of the giving circle. So I paid the amount, and I was thinking, does that, everybody else, it's their community, it's a new community, it's this group of women who have, but I don't feel community yet, right? Like I'm new. So it's the relationships, it's the togetherness, right? So I'm thinking, like you say, the newsletter, what goes from audience to community or feeling a part of. But I think there's that relationship. Or before, when Farah said on the conversations before, like, tell me what communities are you a part of, that had me really like step back and say, like, my son is biracial. So and then I started thinking to myself, is it my community? Are the communities I think are my communities, are they really my communities? Or am I like inserting myself and it's not my community? Like it was like a whole, excuse me, head thing for a while. But this example I first gave with this giving circle, I want it to be my community, and I feel a part of the action of the group, right? But I wouldn't list it as one of my communities yet because I'm new and haven't created those relationships. Yeah. So I think that's a really big part of sort of like switching over to be in community with a group.
Yeah, very, very good. Very, very good. Thank you. Two of the things that are striking me, that are coming out of this conversation. One, people need to be invited. They need to be asked. They need to be invited meaningfully and sincerely. We're invited all the time. Pardon me. I loved Vu's comment that if you were walking down the street in the dead of night and somebody was approaching you from behind, you'd probably be scared because they want to somehow do some community engagement with you. We're all being asked all the time, will you be part of this? Will you be part of that? And I appreciate that, but being asked meaningfully and sincerely. So that's number one. The other thing that's really striking me, and part of that could be asking folks, what does it mean to be an audience? What does it mean to be in community? Do you feel like you're in community? Do you feel, and those are important things for us to know, moving forward and just where we are. But another thing that's occurring to me as y'all are talking is so often it is about, and several of you have mentioned this, seeing who's in the room and wanting to be part of that. And my guess is, I may be completely wrong, but I'm just sort of envisioning being a fan of this band, and seeing this one group that seems to be together. And I really love this band. And so I go to a lot of their, pardon me, I go to a lot of their concerts. and this group is always together. I want to be part of that group. You know, there's something about you know, there's something fun I want to be part of. Anything else that is striking you, that as we start to think about, for lack of a better word, engaging our community, we got to come up with a better word because my fingers are starting to hurt from doing this. As we start to think about that, ways that you have felt involved, that you feel, those are our conditions for success. Andrew and then Josephine.
Thanks. Yeah, lots of really interesting stuff here. I think one of the things I keep coming back to is, and this may be going out of order, but thinking about what we're in, you know, what people are being invited to, or what we are setting up the conditions for them to join, for people who aren't already involved somehow, but might want to be. Because I think, you know, I think every experience and situation is different, right? So the thing that might drive people to go follow a band around might actually be very different than the things that might, you know, and I feel, in my mind, I feel like they probably are. There's, you know, there's a sense of certain feelings you get when you are doing good work that you get no matter what, or you're doing something you enjoy no matter what. But I think, you know, the sort of interesting thing with creating the future, right, is that the whole reason it exists is to sort of then go back out, right? We're not bringing people in to do something for creating the future, right? It exists. It's you know, it's almost kind of a selfless thing, right? If an organization can be a selfless thing, it's all about the other people. So it's like how it's a little bit of a mind bender in that sense to me. But sort of a tangential to that is that everyone is different, and so not just are the experiences different, but the people are different. And so I think, you know, trying to sort of hone in on sort of those 3 to 5 things or whatever it is, like, I don't know, I don't want us to sort of try to get to those things and then have them, you know, I'm sure they'll be great for some people, but I think some people will come for their own reasons and they will be different, and we might not be able to predict those ahead of time and sort of plan for those ahead of time.
So I'd like to just, because Andrew, you touched on something that was kind of going on in my head, which is, you know, I think about this from engagement. Like, engagement is defined by the person engaging. Like, an organization can't engage someone. Like, they can't say, this was an engaging activity. It's like it's only the person. Like, you know, engagement is determined by the engagee, not by anybody else. And so I think there's a little bit of, Andrew, what you're touching on is similar here that I'm starting to feel, which is there is a level of this, which is someone's in community when they feel they are in community. And I know we're trying to sort of tease out, well, what are all of those things? And I think to Andrew's point is we don't necessarily know. I mean, for some people, they're showing up today and they feel totally in community. And there might be someone else sitting in this group of, you know, Hollywood Squares that's saying, I'm kind of audience right now. So I think it's really important that we sort of acknowledge that the differentiation between how we're trying to say someone is feeling about something versus perhaps the observable behavior that we're looking for or wanting, which is, you know, it's fine to say we want people contributing and participating, that's there. And that as we think about, for us, you know, the definition of engagement we're going to use is that, you know, so when we speak, and I think it goes, you know, sort of circles back to Carl's example of like the student councils, which is, you know, at the end of the day, what was it that we wanted as the outcome in terms of the observable behavior and the actual change in conditions that resulted from whatever it was. And if what it is we want more people to feel a sense of ownership, we want more people to have participated or to feel they had the opportunity to participate and were able to, I think there is a bit, there's this balancing, which is some of it's after the fact. We just can't know. We can try and create the advantageous conditions. But there is a point at which we say it's community when a person feels like they're in community. That's, and the recluse who lives in their house and doesn't, or the person who has agoraphobia, they may not feel like everything we're describing is what means community to them, because they have other things that disassociate them and or associate them with different things.
I think that's one of the reasons it's so important for us to be talking about personally when we feel we're in community. What leads me to feel like I'm in community in a way that I want to step in and help or do something. I'm flashing on, and several of you have mentioned this, and Justin, I know you mentioned feeling I have knowledge to share. I have my own meaning making that I want to share. I know for me personally in my neighborhood, and again, stuff's been going on for about 4 or 5 years where this park has just been sort of coming out of nowhere. And suddenly I'll be getting newsletters. Again, I'm on a newsletter list for my neighborhood that'll be talking about an issue, that'll be talking about and my brain goes, they're asking the wrong questions. And when I see people asking the wrong questions, I either scream at the TV, which is very effective, by the way, or I'll say, guys, can we have a conversation? And I sat down with the president of our neighborhood association, but it was the first time. This stuff's been going on for several years. The park has been going on, and I've added my newspaper bags to the doggy bag pile, and I've thanked everybody when I see them doing stuff. But I haven't jumped in until about a year ago when I said, this might be something that fits in my wheelhouse. For me, that was something personal for that particular thing. But I think that it is really important that we be acknowledging what are some of the common things that we've heard. And one of them definitely is being asked, and one of them definitely is that group looks like they're having fun. I want to have fun.
Or it's how you feel, how that thing or the community makes one feel. So when you talk about the band example, with my son being in the group that he was in and watching at the different concerts, this followers, like literally kids would go wherever they're performing. It's the music that makes them feel a particular way. And then it's finding the people that feel that same way too about the same thing, right? Like, so it really does have a lot to do with the feeling of, like we've been saying all along, finding your people. But that's literally what makes them travel, like specifically with the group, the band, the boy band is you love the music, but then you find, and now they're sisters and brothers from across the world because they have this same passion.
Yeah, very much so. It is occurring to me that a big piece of this is about when we are looking at an audience, it's about a thing, and when we're talking about community, it's about the people. The audience is about the band, is about the newsletter, is about this article, is about it's about a thing. And yeah, that's just striking me right now. We are coming up on 20 minutes till, and I'd like to take a moment for reflection, because our reflections, normally we don't take this much time for reflection, but our reflections have been so deep in these conversations that I find we're going late and I'm having to cut things off. So what I'd really love y'all to do is take a look at any notes you took and circle anything that is standing out to you. Something that might have been an aha for you, and also something that you think is really, really relevant, that if you had to say one thing about what it is that leads someone to make that leap from an audience person to a community person who wants to step in and be part of it in a more active way. What is standing out to you?
Well, I can start.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I've been focusing a lot on two very simple things, and that's the words community and engagement. And what do they mean, and what else could we reference to them? And as I look back on especially today's discussion, it does seem to me, both in the community and engagement element, that the creating the future sense is the feeling that you're a part of, you know, looking forward and imagining what things could be, and finding people that you can have relationships with that bring that out in you, and not only share some ideas, but your creativeness and your imagination and feelings, but also invoke additional creativity and feelings and imagination that you've never thought of or thought you could have. And so when I look at both of those words, I really like those words, but in looking at, you know, any kind of difference in them, it still, to me, comes back to it's a feeling of being together. It's a fellowship. It's sharing ideas and your knowledge and skill, but then also listening to those other people that you're in that relationship with, so that you can create something that's not just yours, but that is a shared vision of the group that you're working with.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. That word relationship. Yeah. Andrew.
The two things that stand out to me are that, you know, it's other people that you want to be with in whatever way that, you know, whatever meaning that has for that individual at that time. And also feeling like they can contribute something that they have that is their, you know, that they're one of their things that they believe that they're good at, or that they have experience in, that they can contribute to the group.
Yeah. Laura.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for a really insightful conversation. I definitely am thinking and holding a lot. I really appreciated the different ways we've talked about how being in community has the ability for people to be more active and less active. And sometimes you're a participant, sometimes you're leading, that aspect of how fluid it can be. The one part that I'm struggling with as I think about communities that I belong to is the struggle and tension and conflict in a good way and continuous learning that happens for me in communities. It isn't, for me, it's never been, oh, a community is only a place where I find 100% alignment and, you know, it's just perfect. there is always something that is constantly making me question things about myself, reflect on my actions, reflect on my behavior, learn and grow. And that internal community dynamic that I think is critical to how humans also continue to progress. Like if we all just only connected with like-minded people and then only existed in ways where we were always comfortable, I don't think humans as a whole would ever progress. And so that's the only thing that I felt like was maybe missing in today's conversation, is that I feel like I do this a lot, where in the past I've over-indexed on safety and making everyone feel like, oh, everything should be good. And I've been challenging myself to reframe that notion and to maybe decenter safety for everybody. Because again, I think that there is a lot of learning and growing that happens in community, but that also requires nurturing and intentionality behind it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Justin.
So here I go on some of the semantics. I think some of what we are talking about is actually the differentiation of the verb to commune. We commune selectively with groups. We associate for whatever reason, in whatever way that's meaningful. I actually think talking about community as a noun is problematic, because then we're trying to create that container. And I think, again, some of it depends on what the purpose is. For example, if we're talking about who's affected, well, that's everybody who's affected. I mean, so I would almost, like, as we're having this conversation, I would say my community just exists. It just is all of those who I coexist with. And to Farah's point, like, I may like some of them, I might be uncomfortable with some of them, I might be in some physical places that aren't, but that is my community. My community is it's the coexistence of people together in whatever the space, whether it is online or physical. I think the differentiation is when we start talking about, and what we've been talking about, which is this sense of communing. And that is where we get to the connection, the affirmation, but I do think it's, again, for what we're doing in terms of wanting input from and participation of people who care, I think that is the people who would likely want to commune with there. Where I think it's dangerous is when organizations start to talk about the community, because that's where we start to get the us, them, or they're somehow trying to create a bound, rather than saying simply whom do we affect in the world. So that's, for me, I think it's a little bit of I'm just coming with that slight discomfort, which is, living in a space that's like all around organizational development, which is what I do. I'm so conscious of organizations excluding people from the definition of who they are and who the community is that they serve. And so that's my reflection, is that perhaps, thinking about community as a noun is disadvantageous to us, because it forces us to define that thing as opposed to really thinking about the experience.
We're real good at putting containers around things, and that word puts a container around it. Yeah. I'm thinking about I'm thinking about two things. I'm thinking about the word outreach, and the fact that, again, that is us going out to. And that's in our lexicon. It's normal. We think of it as a good thing. We're doing lots of outreach, but we're reaching out there. And it always reminds me of the fact that Rich Harwood has had to, for easily 10, 15 years now, actually say the words "turn outward." That his whole thing is about organizations turning outward. It's like, that's your whole reason for being. Why do we have to tell them that? So Yeah, yeah. Carl, what's standing out to you?
The first thing that's standing out to me is that I think this has been a really good conversation. So I want to say thank you to everyone. The second thing is that I think we have to be realistic about the fact that, to use Justin's expression, not everybody wants to commune all of the time. And a lot of people are just being happy being an audience at times, and that's okay. Then the next thing was that just thinking about some of the stuff I've come across before is this thing that coming together, it's episodic. It's about where people are in their life. It's about what's going on in their life at that particular time. It's about where they live and so on. So I think we have to sort of think about the fact that if you ask once and it doesn't happen, it's not because they are not someone who wants to be part of the community. It's just that people dip in and out over the sort of the course of their lives.
Yeah.
And then just the last thing, I really like what Farah just was talking about then, about audiences, about being part of the community and how it's different from audience. I thought it was really insightful. And it made me think of something that I was reading the other day, where someone used this expression about audience capture. And you see this with a lot of influencers, where essentially influencers think that an audience wants a certain thing from them, and then the audience just drives them to be more and more extreme in terms of what it is that they're offering that audience. You get into this sort of spiral thing, and that's because the audience, there's no challenge in that relationship back to the audience. The sort of the person who is the influencer is just giving them more and more and more of what they want all the time. And for me, that it comes back to this thing about what is that relationship. It's not just about power, but what is that relationship in terms of the dialogue, where I think for me, being part of a community is about that sort of like, you're not just there to get what you want. We've gone down this sort of, I don't know, maybe it's a sort of a commercial sort of capitalist thing where like when we talk about engagement and stuff all the time, it's all about giving more people what they want all the time so it will come back all the time, and that's what social media is all sort of based on. So there's something here about, if you want to be part of our community, yes, I mean, some of it's about conviviality and having fun, but it's also about what Farah was talking about. It's about challenge, because you can't grow without that. Sorry, that was very long.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. Mark, how about you? What's standing out to you?
Standing out to me is my alarm going off to lead a meeting in 10 minutes. Standing out to me is we're going through this, the outreach. We're talking about community outreach and education all the time, but we're not talking about drawing people in. So I think that's going to be my topic at 6 o'clock for our board meeting for the environmental, because somebody says, oh, we need a volunteer coordinator. I said, we don't have any volunteers. What are you talking about? Well, yeah, but if we need volunteers to do what? Right? What's the point? What are you doing that you need volunteers? And one of the things that I heard somebody say in the last 10 minutes was add your talents. I need you to do what you do. I'm not looking for people to, move plants off a truck. I need your talents. And then the last thing was, we've got observers, we've got participants, and we've got people who belong. And I think that's where we're headed this week anyway.
Wonderful, thank you. Ron, how about you? What's standing out to you today?
I guess for me, in a practical sense, I'm reflecting on I'd like to get the next meeting date and time out on the Facebook list. I felt badly about getting it out so with not enough lead time for Marcos. So I will follow up with that. And I feel in terms of how we feel in these meetings, I kind of miss not seeing some people back. I would like to know if we could follow up and ask people if they would like to come back when they're not here. I don't know how you've done that in the past, but for example, Vu, I would like to have his email or contact info because I still had some questions around what happened in that meeting. And I'd like to get his reflection, and he's got good energy. So I kind of miss when people are missing and kind of like to keep in contact somehow. And I guess I have a question if we are inviting people, I'm not sure if this is the integrity group or if this is a planning cohort or if they kind of mesh together and then they separate. I'm just not quite sure how that is right now. But is there sort of a number that you have talked about in the past that's comfortable on these calls in terms of inviting people along?
Yeah,
That's what I'm.
Those are great logistical questions. I can answer very, very quickly. August 30th at 12 noon to 2 p.m. Pacific time, which is 3 p.m. Eastern time and 4 p.m. Nova Scotia time. We are, and yes, I carry these time zones in my head. Usually around 15 people is the most that allows us to really have decent conversation. And this has been an unusual couple of months because the integrity team has really been focusing on building a community engagement plan and what that looks like when it is adhering to our values. And coincident with that, we have a practice cohort that is focusing on using catalytic thinking for community engagement. And so they have been part of these conversations, will be part of the conversation on the 30th. And they've also been meeting separately as just a practice cohort. So yeah, thank you for that, Ron. Rachel, what's standing out to you?
Yeah, so I think I'm just reflecting on and thinking about how special it is to be a part of a community where you feel like you belong and you can actively participate and your voice is heard, and you're also hearing others' voices and opinions that may differ from your own, and you're still growing together. And just how special that is, especially with how lonely I think people are right now with the pandemic and feeling disconnected across the country. So, I mean, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Wonderful, thank you. Elaine, how about you? What's standing out to you from our conversation?
Well, what's standing out for me is that I missed a bulk of the conversation because, like you, Hildy, I have things going on here and I'm not even close to getting the toilet. But I had to go out and supervise where they're putting the duct work, and then they turned off the power and I lost my internet connection. So I'm grateful for those who were sharing what stood out for them. So from Fahar and from Carl in the last few minutes and Justin. So I have some things to just take away and reflect on. And these meetings, these gatherings always leave me pensive and ruminating. And, you know, I just want more because I feel like every time we turn over a rock, I get a little more clear, and it's very helpful for me. So I just want to say I appreciate, and I'm sad that I missed a great deal of the conversation, and look forward to the notes because I know that those will be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Josephine, how about you?
I definitely ditto Rachel's comment about it's like a blessing. It's, you know, wonderful to have a moment or have this time to really reflect on what my own communities are, and then what does that mean to be a part of them, and the loneliness some folks are feeling. So certainly in that space. And then just really, I think I'm still thinking about the difference of being in an audience versus in community and not wanting to let myself say, this isn't the right language, but not wanting to let myself mean audience is bad. Not bad, but, you know, not acceptable in the realm that we're speaking of. And that, you know, I feel like a lot of times we're audience and then community members. So just playing with all of that.
Yeah, wonderful. You know, Farah was talking a couple of meetings ago about the false binaries. And I think one of the things that we've really been talking about, it's not an either or. We can be both at the same time. It's a continuum, and it is fluid. Sometimes I'm an audience member. Sometimes I just want to sit and watch. Yeah. Wonderful stuff. Dimitri, how about you?
First of all, my mind is blown trying to go down each one of these paths and unpack them. Just a general comment is language is so imprecise. I'm not sure what someone means. And we try to explain it to each other. And I'm still sometimes wondering, you know, obviously talking about community, talking about audience. I've been thinking about if I'm in community, I can influence my environment, I can influence that community, and I can influence each other. If I'm an audience, it's not an option. So I'm just thinking that that is one of the things that happens in community, is the ability to influence each other. The other thing I was thinking about was talking about or thinking about something that Farah was talking about, that being in community isn't always being in a fun place, you know, in a place that pats you on the back and says, hey, you're great. And what it made me think about is sort of a dynamic tension that exists in a community that is what can create an environment that leads toward growth. That, you know, it helps me change my ideas, it changed my thinking in a way that is going back to the sort of, not rules, but sort of the things that make a community, is to feel safe, to feel invited, to feel honored, to be there, but still it's not always comfortable because ideas are challenged, and I'm not handed what the influencer gives me, which is what I expect whenever I get into that. So, you know, I'm still ruminating about all of it, but there's so many different areas that I'm still thinking about, and this is an amazing conversation today. So thank you, everyone.
It was amazing. The few things quickly that are standing out to me. One is that absolutely these push my thinking. That being in community, a big part of that is, whoa, I never thought about that. And then my brain exploding, and probably being an audience member, or a really bad audience member for a while I just sitting inside my own head. But I really appreciate that thought. The other thing that occurred to me, and several of you mentioned it, was that being in community is having the ability to affect the results of what happens, affect the outcome. And that really struck me. So as we're moving forward, really thinking about that's exactly what we're talking about. I mean, if we're talking about what's next for creating the future, it is people affecting the outcome, and that was really powerful for me. So, Josephine, did you have one more thing?
I just wanted to add that I've been paying attention to the way you're asking the questions of what needs to be in place for folks to be in community. Like in our conversation, the more, you know, you keep telling us to pay attention to the questions, but watching you again today, where you insert those questions and how it does lead the conversation forward, has been fabulous. So I just wanted to add that, and thank you.
Thank you. Good practice person. Good. Wonderful. Well, it is delightful as always to be with you, and I'm looking forward to actually sharing this conversation, because if there's anything that says you want to be part of this conversation, I think it's today's conversation. So thank you all. We will, I think the cohort will be getting together once in between now and the 30th. We'll be getting together definitely on the 30th as a whole group. And in between there, Dimitri and I are heading back east to visit family. So that's another awesome, and we're very excited. So we'll see you all. Thank you so much for being here.